The peaceful night sky over Earth suddenly cracked open as a huge shadow descended from the heavens. It was unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. The massive warship, far bigger than any human-made ship, blocked out the stars as it hovered above the planet. The Empire had arrived. This wasn't just a ship, it was a symbol of the Galactic Empire's power, a force built to conquer and destroy. Panic spread quickly across the world. The ship's size alone was enough to make the bravest men tremble. Governments scrambled for answers, but the message was clear. The Empire demanded Earth's immediate surrender or face total destruction. Across the globe, military leaders, scientists, and civilians alike watched in horror. The once peaceful world now found itself on the edge of an unimaginable war. The ship's size was so enormous it seemed to block out the sun. Its hull shimmered with dark energy, and strange lights pulsed from its surface. Beneath its metallic shell, a hum of power filled the air. It was a weapon that could wipe out entire cities with a single strike. The warship was a terrifying reminder of how small and fragile Earth was compared to the vast power of the galaxy. Governments quickly convened, and the leaders of Earth gathered to discuss their options. There was no denying the truth. The Galactic Empire had advanced technology beyond anything humanity had ever dreamed of. Their weapons were far more powerful than anything Earth could ever produce. Cities trembled beneath the weight of the warship, and people from every nation could only watch in fear as the mighty ship hovered above. The warship's message was broadcast directly to Earth's leaders. A chilling voice echoed through the airwaves. "Surrender now or be destroyed. Your world is ours to conquer. Your resistance is futile." The transmission cut off, leaving nothing but a deafening silence. The leaders of Earth met urgently, realizing they had only one choice: to fight back. They knew they were outmatched and outgunned, but Earth's will to survive had never been stronger. Military forces from every corner of the globe began to prepare for the impossible. Tanks rolled out onto the streets, jets took to the skies, and every possible weapon was readied in hopes of defending the planet. But even as humanity prepared for battle, it was clear that conventional weapons wouldn't be enough to defeat the warship. In every nation, people whispered about the Empire's reputation for crushing civilizations with ease. The fear of extinction weighed heavily on everyone's shoulders. Earth's leaders, however, knew they could not surrender. They understood that if they gave in, their freedom would be lost forever, and they would become nothing more than subjects under the Empire's rule. The idea of resisting was terrifying, but it was the only choice they had. As the world's military powers mobilized, one man, General Marcus Eastwood, spoke up in the war room. He had been through many battles, but nothing like this. The warship in the sky was unlike any enemy he had faced before. However, he also knew that Earth had one strength that no empire could ever understand: its people. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology or firepower. It was their unyielding spirit. General Eastwood addressed the world's leaders. "We may not have their weapons or their power, but we have something far greater: our unity and our will to fight. We will not surrender. We will stand together. We will fight back." With those words, hope flickered in the hearts of Earth's defenders. The warship's message had shaken them, but it had also awakened something else. Humanity had been pushed to the edge, but they had not given up. It was time for Earth's greatest asset to be unleashed: human ingenuity and determination. As the military forces prepared for the worst, a team of scientists, engineers, and brilliant minds came together to work on a new plan. They were not equipped to fight a warship of this magnitude, but they were determined to find a way. In secret labs across the world, teams worked day and night, knowing that humanity's future depended on what they could create. But time was running out. Every hour that passed brought the warship closer to unleashing its destructive power. Then, as Earth's forces continued to prepare, a new signal came from the warship. The voice spoke again, this time with a more menacing tone. "Your time is running out, Earth. Surrender now or face extinction. Your defenses are powerless. We will not wait much longer. The countdown to destruction had begun. The sky above Earth trembled as the warship's engines roared to life. Its massive cannons began to glow, and the threat was no longer a distant one. Humanity's greatest challenge had arrived. But as fear spread like wildfire, General Eastwood and his team knew that giving up was never an option. Earth's spirit was stronger than any weapon the Empire could throw at them. The world held its breath. Could humanity truly withstand this galactic threat? Could they fight back against an enemy that seemed unbeatable? The answer, though unknown, was simple. Earth would not surrender. Earth would not fall without a fight. And so the battle for survival began. The world trembled under the shadow of the Galactic Empire's warship. As it loomed above Earth, its presence alone was enough to send shivers down the spines of every human. The warship, dark and menacing, pulsed with an energy that seemed to defy everything humanity understood about science. It was a marvel of galactic engineering, designed to crush entire civilizations. The Empire had arrived, and they were making it clear that Earth was their next target. As the warship hovered above, it broadcast a chilling message across the planet, its voice echoing into every home, office, and street corner. Surrender now, or be destroyed. You are weak, and your resistance will be pointless. The message sent a wave of panic through every government and military force on Earth. How could humanity stand against something so overwhelmingly powerful? People gathered in the streets, staring up in disbelief. The warship was a symbol of the Empire's strength. No one knew how to fight it. There was no technology on Earth capable of matching its power. For the first time in history, Earth seemed powerless in the face of such an immense threat. In every corner of the globe, governments quickly began to mobilize. The best military minds and leaders gathered in secret war rooms, trying to devise a plan to defend their world. Cities on the verge of chaos locked down, and military forces began preparing for the unthinkable. The warship's massive size and the energy pulses it emitted made conventional weapons look like toys. Earth's best hope seemed impossible. Meanwhile, in the midst of the chaos, a quiet meeting took place in a hidden underground facility. The leaders of the world had called for their greatest minds to gather and find a way to fight back. Among them was Dr. Elena Cross, a brilliant scientist and strategist who had spent years studying the galaxy's technologies. She had seen alien forces before, but nothing like the Empire. The warship's design was beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. "I've studied their technology," Dr. Cross said, her voice steady despite the fear rising in her chest. "The warship is nearly invulnerable. Its shields can withstand any conventional attack. We can't defeat it with our current weapons." Her words hung in the air like a heavy weight. There was no denying the truth. But just as despair threatened to take hold, Dr. Cross's eyes lit up with an idea. "There's one thing we still have that the Empire doesn't," she continued, her voice gaining confidence. "We have human ingenuity. Our ability to think, adapt, and create in the face of impossible odds is something they can't replicate. We've been underestimated before, and we will show them why they're wrong." Her words struck a chord with the group. They weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for the future of humanity. The warship's arrival wasn't just a military challenge. It was a challenge to everything Earth had worked for. Dr. Cross's plan wasn't based on advanced weapons or technology. It was based on outsmarting the Empire. And if there was one thing humanity was good at, it was outsmarting its enemies. Meanwhile, across the world, ordinary people were preparing in their own way. Families held each other close, and citizens rallied together, vowing to protect their homes. It wasn't just the military that was ready for war. The entire planet had united in the face of a common enemy. There was something powerful in the air, something that no warship or alien force could understand: the spirit of humanity. As military forces scrambled to gather whatever forces they could muster, Dr. Cross worked tirelessly with her team of scientists, engineers, and strategists. The clock was ticking. Earth didn't have much time before the warship launched its full assault. But with Dr. Cross's leadership, a plan began to take shape. The team focused on one crucial detail: the warship's energy core. They didn't have the firepower to take it down with brute force, but they could exploit one weakness: its energy system. Dr. Cross hypothesized that if they could disrupt its power source, the warship's shields would fail. It was a long shot, but it was their only chance. Earth's greatest minds were not just working to defend the planet. They were working to outwit an enemy that had never faced human resourcefulness. But the plan came with risks. The mission to infiltrate the warship would be perilous. The Empire's forces would stop at nothing to protect their ship, and every move Earth's defenders made would be watched closely. As Dr. Cross and her team prepared for the dangerous mission, the world held its breath. The warship was still hovering above, waiting for the final command to strike. Every second brought humanity closer to the brink. And yet, despite the fear and uncertainty, there was something else: a quiet determination, a refusal to surrender. Humanity had always been underestimated by those who saw it as weak. The Empire had made a grave mistake in underestimating Earth's resolve. Earth wasn't just fighting for survival. It was fighting to prove that the strength of the human spirit could conquer even the greatest of threats. The night sky shimmered with stars, but there was something different tonight. A massive shape began to block out the heavens. Earth had never seen anything like it. The Galactic Empire's greatest warship, a colossal floating fortress, had arrived. It wasn't just a ship. It was a symbol of the Empire's might, a weapon meant to conquer and destroy. The sight of it sent shockwaves across the planet. Nothing could prepare humanity for this moment. As the warship hovered ominously above Earth, its sheer size made it look like a dark moon in the sky. Across the world, governments and military leaders scrambled to respond. In every major city, people stopped in their tracks to look up at the nightmarish sight. There were whispers of panic and fear. What were they facing? A force of such power that no army on Earth could match it. The message was clear: Earth's time was up. A voice boomed from the warship, a deep, chilling tone that resonated through the very air itself. "You are weak, Earthlings. Surrender or face extinction." The words echoed across every news broadcast, every communication system, sending waves of terror through the planet. The message was simple: submit or perish. In Washington, the UN Security Council gathered in an emergency meeting. The room was tense, filled with military generals, scientists, and world leaders. The fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. Earth had no experience in dealing with threats of this magnitude. No weapons, no technology, nothing in their arsenal could stand up to such overwhelming power. "This is a nightmare," General Harris said, his voice strained. "We have no chance against them. Their technology is light years ahead of ours." Dr. Elena Cross, a brilliant scientist and strategist, sat at the head of the table. She had spent years studying the galaxy's powers, but nothing could prepare her for this moment. The warship's appearance was a sign of the Empire's ambition. If Earth fell, it would send a message to every other planet in the galaxy that resistance was futile. But Dr. Cross wasn't ready to give up. Humanity had faced impossible odds before and survived. They had ingenuity, creativity, and a spirit that could not be crushed. "We can't rely on force alone," Dr. Cross said. "We need to outthink them. We've done it before, and we can do it again." The room fell silent. Her words struck a chord with the others. It wasn't just about technology or firepower. It was about strategy. It was about the human will to survive. Meanwhile, across the globe, everyday people reacted in their own way. In the streets, families huddled together. Parents reassured their children, trying to shield them from the terror that gripped the world. People didn't know what to expect next, but there was a growing sense of unity. Earth had never faced an enemy like this, but humanity wasn't ready to go down without a fight. The military mobilized quickly, pulling together every available resource. From jet fighters to armored tanks, nothing seemed capable of stopping the warship. Every force in the world was in motion, preparing for what seemed like the end. But Dr. Cross's team wasn't giving up just yet. They focused on the one thing the Empire had failed to account for: human ingenuity. There were no weapons strong enough to bring down the warship, but Dr. Cross believed that their best weapon was their ability to think beyond the obvious. Earth had always found a way to surprise its enemies. "We may not have their technology, but we have something they don't," Dr. Cross said, looking around the room at her colleagues. "We have the human mind, the ability to adapt and create in the face of impossible odds." While the world's military forces prepared for a direct assault, Dr. Cross and her team worked in secret to come up with a plan. They believed the warship's greatest weakness wasn't in its size or firepower, it was in its energy core. The Empire's warship was powered by a massive energy source, and if they could disrupt it, they might have a chance. The plan was risky. It involved infiltrating the warship itself, a mission that would likely cost many lives. But it was humanity's only chance. The clock was ticking. As the warship continued to hover above, its engines thrumming with power, the people of Earth waited. What would come next? The warship was ready to strike. Could humanity, against all odds, turn the tide? Could they outsmart the Empire and live to see another day? The tension on Earth was palpable. As the Empire's warship loomed in the sky, its engines hummed with a low, menacing growl. The sheer size of the ship made it look invincible, and every country on Earth watched in fear. People everywhere were asking the same question: would humanity survive this? The Empire's demands were simple: surrender immediately or face total destruction. No one knew what the warship was capable of, but the fear of the unknown was enough to freeze entire nations in place. The military mobilized in desperation, but they all knew that their weapons, no matter how advanced, were no match for the Empire's might. The air was thick with panic, but Dr. Elena Cross and her team were determined to change the odds. Deep in a secret underground lab, Dr. Cross and her team worked tirelessly, racing against time. They had one mission: to find a way to turn the tide in humanity's favor. The warship's arrival was a challenge unlike anything they'd ever faced. The stakes were higher than any battle fought before. Earth's survival hung on their ability to outsmart an empire that had crushed entire civilizations without mercy. Dr. Cross wasn't one to back down in the face of overwhelming odds. Her mind raced as she recalled years of research into galactic technology. One thing stood out: the warship's energy core. While the ship's weapons were formidable, its power source was something different. If they could sabotage the core, they might be able to neutralize the warship's enormous advantage. But getting close to the warship was nearly impossible. Earth's military forces had tried, and each attempt had been met with failure. Every fighter jet sent to engage the ship had been easily disabled by the ship's advanced shields and weaponry. Even if Dr. Cross had the perfect plan, getting near the ship to execute it was another matter entirely. Meanwhile, the world's leaders were running out of time. They couldn't afford to wait any longer. Earth's population was on the brink of panic. Cities were shutting down, businesses were closed, and the military was preparing for an all-out battle. Every single person knew that their world was at risk. But amidst the chaos, one thing remained constant: humanity's will to survive. In Washington, the president addressed the nation in a televised speech. "We face a threat unlike any we've ever encountered," he said, his voice filled with solemnity. "But we will not bow to fear. We will stand together, and we will fight." The president's words were a call to action. The entire world needed to unite, and fast. As the president spoke, Dr. Cross was finalizing her plan. There was one last hope: a small team of soldiers who would infiltrate the warship and plant a device that could disrupt the energy core. It was risky, it was dangerous, but it was humanity's only chance. In the dead of night, a team of elite soldiers, led by Captain Jake Reynolds, prepared for the impossible. They were going to take the fight to the warship. The military had no experience with such advanced technology, but the soldiers were ready to do whatever it took to protect their world. The team was briefed on the mission: infiltrate the warship, sabotage its power core, and escape. There was no backup. There was no second chance. They were Earth's last line of defense. As they prepared to board the transport that would take them to the warship, Captain Reynolds looked at his team. "We're not just fighting for our lives," he said. "We're fighting for everyone. If we fail, Earth is gone. But if we succeed, we'll have a chance to take back our future." The soldiers boarded the transport, hearts pounding. They knew the risks, but they also knew that their mission was crucial. As the transport lifted off, Earth's last hope moved toward the warship. Back on Earth, the warship began its countdown. It was ready to strike. The people of Earth waited, helpless to stop the inevitable. The fate of the planet rested on the shoulders of a small team of soldiers. The countdown was nearing its final seconds. The warship's colossal engines thrummed louder and louder, sending vibrations through the air as it hovered ominously above Earth. It was poised to strike, a weapon of unimaginable power, ready to unleash its wrath. The world watched, holding its breath, as the soldiers aboard the transport made their way toward the heart of the Empire's greatest warship. Captain Jake Reynolds sat silently, his eyes locked on the control panel ahead. He could feel the tension in the air, the weight of the mission pressing on him and his team. Each of them knew the stakes. Failure meant the end of Earth as they knew it. The lives of billions rested on their shoulders. There was no room for error. "We're almost there," Captain Reynolds said quietly, breaking the silence. His voice was steady, but beneath it there was a flicker of uncertainty. They had trained for this moment, but nothing could prepare them for the reality of what lay ahead. The transport swerved and dipped, weaving through the night sky as they approached the warship. It loomed even larger now, its dark silhouette casting a shadow over the Earth below. The soldiers could see it clearly, with its massive, armored hull and weaponry that seemed designed to destroy entire worlds. Their objective was simple: sabotage the warship's energy core. But getting to it, that was another story. As they neared the warship, the transport began to shake violently. The warship's sensors had detected their approach. A blinding flash of light erupted from the warship's surface, followed by a wave of energy that struck the transport, sending it spiraling. The soldiers braced themselves as the ship lurched violently, their bodies slammed against the walls. Captain Reynolds gripped the seat in front of him, trying to maintain control. "Hold on," he shouted, his voice commanding. The transport's systems flickered, but it didn't give in. It steadied itself and continued its descent toward the warship's docking bay. The soldiers knew that time was running out. If they didn't make it to the core soon, the warship would be upon Earth, and it would be too late. "Brace for impact," Captain Reynolds ordered. "We're going in." The transport shot toward a large docking bay on the warship's underside, a giant opening that seemed like the only way in. The bay was a massive cavern surrounded by thick walls and a strange blue energy field. As the transport entered the bay, it felt like they were moving into the heart of a beast, a place so foreign and intimidating that it was hard to comprehend. With a heavy thud, the transport made contact with the floor. The soldiers quickly unstrapped themselves from their seats and geared up. Their mission was clear. They had to get to the core, find the weakness, and destroy it before the warship could complete its attack on Earth. The door to the transport opened with a hiss, and the team stepped out onto the cold, metallic floor of the warship. It was eerily quiet. The sound of their boots echoed in the empty bay. The air was thick with tension, but there was no time to waste. They moved quickly, their steps deliberate as they made their way down the long corridors. The walls were lined with strange alien technology, pulsing with an energy that felt foreign and powerful. This was no ordinary warship. Every corner seemed to hide an unknown danger. The soldiers made their way deeper into the ship, their weapons at the ready. They encountered no resistance, but they knew it was only a matter of time before the Empire's soldiers or automated defenses would find them. They had no backup, no way to communicate with Earth. It was just them, alone in the belly of the beast. After what felt like hours of navigating through the labyrinthine halls, they finally reached a massive chamber. At the center of the room stood the warship's energy core, a pulsating, glowing sphere suspended in midair. It radiated an intense, otherworldly energy that hummed in the soldiers' bones. "This is it," whispered Dr. Elena Cross, who had joined the team to provide her expertise on the warship's systems. "We need to plant the disruptor here. If we do it right, it should short-circuit the core and disable the ship." Captain Reynolds nodded. They didn't have much time. The warship's weapons were already charging. They could feel the imminent threat as the entire ship seemed to come alive around them. The soldiers positioned themselves near the core, planting the disruptor with precision. Sweat poured down their faces, but they remained focused. Suddenly, the ship's alarms blared. Red lights flashed across the room as a force field shot up around the core, trapping them inside. The countdown had begun. "They found us," shouted one of the soldiers, panic creeping into his voice. "We have no choice," Captain Reynolds said. "We finish this mission now, or we never leave." The soldiers fought through the fear, completing their task. The disruptor was in place, but as they turned to flee, a loud metallic hiss filled the room. The doors slammed shut. They were trapped. The seconds felt like hours as the team stood frozen, staring at the impenetrable force field around the energy core. Sweat dripped down their faces, their breaths coming in short, sharp gasps. Every soldier knew the situation was dire. They had planted the disruptor, but they hadn't counted on the ship's defenses, locking them in. The countdown was still ticking. The warship was preparing to unleash its devastating power on Earth. Captain Reynolds' mind raced. They had only moments to escape before the warship's weapons fired, and their mission would be for nothing. The force field hummed louder, as if mocking their predicament. There was no way to hack the system from the inside. The ship's technology was too advanced for them to bypass in such a short time. "We need a plan, and fast," one of the soldiers shouted, panic creeping into his voice. Captain Reynolds steadied himself. "Focus. We've faced worse situations than this. Stay calm and think." He scanned the room, looking for anything that might give them a way out. The core's energy field was too strong to break through directly, and the walls surrounding them seemed impenetrable. But the room wasn't just a containment chamber. It had ventilation shafts, narrow, but possibly big enough for them to crawl through. "I've got an idea," Dr. Elena Cross said, her voice steady despite the tension. She moved to the side of the room and began studying the controls beside the ventilation system. "These ducts could lead to the lower levels of the ship. If we can get to them, we might find an access point to disable the force field." The team gathered around her, eyes wide with a flicker of hope. They didn't have much choice. The countdown to the warship's weapon discharge was getting dangerously close. The energy from the core surged, and they could feel the heat building. It was now or never. "All right, Dr. Cross, we're all in. Get us out of here," Captain Reynolds ordered. With swift hands, Dr. Cross managed to override the ventilation system. The ducts slid open, revealing a narrow, dark passage. The air was stale and thick with an unsettling hum, but it was their only escape. The team quickly began climbing into the shaft, moving one by one. There was no time to waste. The space was cramped, forcing the soldiers to crawl on their stomachs. Every movement was careful and deliberate, as the walls of the ship seemed to close in on them. The ventilation system twisted and turned, and they had no idea where it would lead. The only thing that kept them going was the ticking countdown in the back of their minds, urging them to push forward, no matter the cost. As they crawled deeper into the ship, they could hear the distant rumble of the warship's engines and the sound of automated security systems coming online. It was clear that they weren't safe for long. The Empire's technology was vast, and the warship had more than enough defense mechanisms to wipe them out if they weren't careful. "Just a little longer," Dr. Cross muttered, her voice strained from crawling. "We're getting close to the central control room. If we can access the system from there, we can disable the force field and stop the countdown." But the journey was far from over. As they crawled, the team could hear the sound of footsteps in the distance. The Empire's soldiers were on their trail. The rumbling of mechanical boots echoed through the ducts, growing louder with each passing second. The soldiers could hear them getting closer, and the pressure in the air increased as the countdown neared its end. Captain Reynolds motioned for everyone to speed up. "Hurry, we can't let them catch us now." The soldiers pushed forward, adrenaline pumping through their veins as they neared the central control room. Every second was vital. But as they reached the end of the duct, the passageway collapsed. The team scrambled to get out of the debris, realizing they had been cut off from the rest of the ship. The walls had shifted, and the ventilation shaft was no longer an escape route. Panic set in. "We're trapped," one soldier yelled. But Captain Reynolds wouldn't let fear take hold. "Stay calm. We're not done yet. Look for another way out." The team searched frantically, looking for an escape route, but time was running out. They could hear the Empire's forces closing in, and the energy core was still humming with dangerous power. It was only a matter of time before the warship's weapons activated. If they didn't act soon, the warship would fire, and Earth's last hope would be lost. Dr. Cross, exhausted but determined, spotted a control panel nearby. "This might be it. I can override the system and give us access to the ship's mainframe. But it will take a few minutes." Captain Reynolds nodded, a sense of urgency flooding through him. "Do it. Now." As Dr. Cross worked feverishly on the panel, the rest of the team stood guard, weapons ready. The tension was unbearable. They could hear the approaching soldiers, the echo of boots growing louder as the Empire's forces closed in. But Dr. Cross's fingers danced over the controls, her mind racing with calculations and strategy. The team stood on edge as the force field flickered and crackled, its energy surging with violent intensity. The countdown clock was dangerously close to zero, and the pressure inside the control room was suffocating. Captain Reynolds watched as Dr. Cross worked furiously, trying to override the system and buy them more time. Every movement she made was crucial. Every second felt like an eternity. If she failed, the warship would unleash its destructive power, and Earth would be no more. "Almost there," Dr. Cross muttered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the warship's systems. Her fingers raced across the control panel, trying to bypass the final security measures. Sweat dripped from her brow, her concentration unbroken even as the pressure mounted. They were so close, but that didn't mean they were safe. The ship's automated defenses were starting to respond, and she knew the window of opportunity was closing fast. Outside the control room, the sounds of Empire soldiers grew louder. Their heavy footsteps echoed down the corridors, their boots pounding the metal floors with precision. The walls trembled as the soldiers activated their weapons. A sense of urgency ran through the team as they readied their weapons, preparing for the inevitable confrontation. They had no choice but to fight their way out. "Focus, team," Captain Reynolds commanded, his voice steady but filled with tension. "We need to hold them off long enough for Dr. Cross to finish her work. We can't let them stop her." The soldiers nodded, taking their positions around the control room, their weapons drawn. They'd fought together before, but this time, the stakes were higher than ever. Their backs were against the wall, and every move they made could determine the fate of humanity. Dr. Cross finally let out a sharp breath. "Got it." She slammed her hand down on the final button, and the control panel blinked, the force field flickering before it shut down completely. The warship's defensive systems deactivated, and the countdown came to a screeching halt. But before the team could breathe a sigh of relief, the door to the control room burst open. Empire soldiers flooded in, weapons raised, their faces cold and determined. There was no time to react. The battle had begun. "Open fire," Captain Reynolds shouted, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. The soldiers responded instantly, unleashing a barrage of gunfire as the Empire's forces advanced. The gunfire was deafening, the air thick with the sound of explosions and laser blasts. The soldiers fought with everything they had, determined not to let the warship's power destroy their world. But the Empire's forces were relentless, advancing in perfect formation, their advanced armor and weapons making them formidable opponents. Dr. Cross quickly moved to the side, taking cover behind a console. She glanced at the control panel, confirming that the force field was down. But there was still one major obstacle: the ship's core. Without disabling it completely, the warship would still have enough power to destroy Earth. "We need to get to the core," Dr. Cross yelled over the chaos. "That's the only way to stop it for good." Captain Reynolds nodded, his mind racing as he quickly formulated a plan. "We'll split up. You and I will take the lead. The rest of you provide cover. We can't afford to lose anyone now." The team moved quickly, their tactical training kicking in. They maneuvered through the ship's corridors, dodging blasts and taking down enemy soldiers as they went. The warship's interior was a maze of metallic hallways and reinforced doors, but they pressed on, determined to reach the core before it was too late. As they moved deeper into the heart of the warship, they could feel the intensity of the energy growing stronger. The core was close now, and they could hear the hum of its power as it surged to life. The closer they got, the more the ship seemed to react to their presence, its automated defenses locking onto them. "Almost there," Captain Reynolds said, his voice tense. He led the team around a corner, his eyes scanning the hallway for any sign of movement. The air was thick with the smell of burning metal and smoke, and the floor was slick with the remnants of battle. But just as they reached the final door to the core room, an explosion ripped through the hall, sending shockwaves through the ship. The team was thrown to the ground, and the blast knocked their weapons from their hands. "Get up! Get up!" Captain Reynolds shouted, struggling to his feet. His heart pounded in his chest as he looked around, checking on his team. Everyone was alive, but they were shaken. The blast had caused serious damage to the ship's internal systems, and the door to the core room was now sealed shut. "We don't have much time," Dr. Cross screamed. "If we don't get to that core now, the warship will launch its final strike." The team regrouped, knowing they had no choice but to break through the door. They grabbed what weapons they could, determined to finish the mission.